Okay, today we're making New England clam chowder, which is one of our favorite soups, and it's really quite easy to make. And what you're going to need are 4 strips of bacon, a celery stalk, a carrot which has been peeled, about a half an onion, a stick of butter, that's 1/4 pound, 2 small or 1 large new potatoes, 4 6.5 ounces of clams, a bottle of clam juice, 1 quart of whole milk. Now if you want to substitute low fat you can, or I suppose you could even use half and half, but I usually just use whole milk. And then you want 8 tablespoons of flour. And I use 8 heaping tablespoons because you end up with a pretty thick soup when you're done. If you don't want it as thick, just use 8 level teaspoons, but whatever consistency you like. So the first thing we're going to do is get everything out of the way here, and we're going to chop our vegetables. And it can be a relatively coarse chop. We'll do the celery. And so that's our mirepoix, combination of celery, carrots, and onion. And then the potatoes will go into a saucepan that we'll cover with water. And then it's time to go to the stove. Okay, so now that we've got everything prepped, we're going to start cooking the bacon. The 4 strips, I just want to get this browned. We have the potatoes going back here. They're just simmering. They'll take about 15 minutes. You just want to cook them through until they're soft. And then over here is the pot where we're going to make the chowder itself. And to start that, we'll add the 1 stick of butter, and bring that up so it starts to melt. And then when the butter is melted, we're going to add the flour and stir that so that it makes basically a roux. And you want to cook this just a couple of minutes just to get rid of the raw flour taste. Again, like I say, about 60 seconds is all this will take. Then you want to add the milk, and as you add the milk, you want to whisk it add the milk slowly, and you're going to whisk it so that you don't develop any lumps. As soon as you get the flour and the butter incorporated, you can go ahead and pour that in. And then you also want to add the other liquids, which would be the bottle of clam juice. And then the juice from the clams. I don't add the clams themselves until the end because it's easier to whisk if you don't put the clams in, but we'll just add the juice. And then you can bring the heat up on this. You have to watch this so that it doesn't burn or stick, but you need to get the milk and the clam juice mixed thoroughly, and you're going to have to keep this, you're going to bring this up just till it comes to a simmer so that it starts to thicken. Keep an eye on the bacon. And again, it's going to take probably 5 to 7 minutes, I'd say, to depending on how hot your stove is, to get the milk and the base thickened. So I think the bacon's done like that. So I'm going to drain the bacon onto paper towels. And you'll notice there's a little bit of bacon fat. For some reason, this is a thick-cut bacon, and it doesn't render very much fat. If you use a more normal bacon, you'll end up with quite a bit more bacon fat. And that's just fine because it's going to give the clam chowder a nice flavor. So then you're just going to add your mirepoix, that is the onions, celery, and carrots, and just let them sweat a couple of minutes until they begin to glisten a little bit. Meanwhile, you can see over here that the milk mixture has started to thicken a little bit. It's not quite there yet, but it's beginning to get thicker. And if you add just a little bit of salt to the vegetables, that'll help draw out some of the moisture. Now you can see that it's the milk mixture here is getting quite thick. It's just beginning to, you see the consistency, and it's just beginning to bubble around the edges. I want to make sure this doesn't come to a boil. So you see how it's sticking to the pan, and I'm going to turn it all the way down to low now and just let it continue to simmer. And I just want the vegetables to soften just a little bit. When you put them into the hot stew mixture, they'll continue to cook and soften up. And now that the soup itself is thickened, we can add the clams. Then I'll add the vegetables. And then once everything's thickened, I prefer to just use a wooden spoon. If you try to whisk it now, everything gets caught up in the whisk. And I believe the potatoes are done. You can tell that they've been on about 15 minutes, and they're soft. So I'll just drain the potatoes. And add those. And then the last thing to do is to just chop the bacon up. Again, I just sort of do it into lardons. It's not chopped really fine. Then give that a stir, and you can see it's really gotten quite thick now. So I'm going to turn the heat off. And then all that's left is you're going to want to season it with salt and pepper. And the thing that I always like to add is celery salt. Just gives it a little added flavor. And that's it. It's ready to serve up. You can see the consistency. It's rather thick, and as I said, if you don't like it this thick, then rather than use 8 heaping tablespoons of flour, you can just add 8 level teaspoons, or even less, just depending on how thick you want it. But I like it rather thick. So that's the finished product.